Hey everyone, my name's Jake, I'm 26, and I'm from Brazil. But just 5 months ago, I couldn't speak a single full sentence in English. Not even something simple like, "How are you?" without overthinking every word. I was completely lost. Today, I want to share with you how I managed to learn English in just 5 months, without paying for expensive classes, without traveling to an English-speaking country, and without wasting my time on useless methods. But this isn't just my story, it's your story too. If you've ever felt frustrated, stuck, or embarrassed because of your English, stick around. I was exactly where you are, and I promise that if you follow my journey, step by step, you'll know exactly how to improve your English. So let's start at the beginning, because my journey didn't begin with motivation. It began with a big failure, one that completely changed my life. The moment everything shifted, I've always dreamed of working for an international company. My ultimate goal was to become a software engineer at a big tech company. I loved coding, I was good at it, and I spent countless hours working day and night to become the best. Finally, after years of grinding, I got my chance. I applied to a huge company in the US. The recruiter emailed me. "Congratulations, you've been selected for an interview." I was ecstatic. I pictured my life in a new country, earning a big salary, and working alongside the best people. Then the interview happened. I remember it like it was yesterday. I opened Zoom and saw 3 interviewers, all native English speakers. They started talking, and it felt like someone had hit fast forward on their voices. I couldn't understand a word. The first question came. "Jake, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your experience in software development?" I panicked. I knew the answer in my head, but the words wouldn't come out. I stammered, Yes, I am, software. I do coding, many projects good. I am very good." They looked at me. The silence hit like a knife in my stomach. Another question came, and I couldn't answer that either. Finally, one of them smiled and said, "All right, Jake. Thank you for your time." I knew exactly what that meant. I had failed. I didn't get the job, not because I wasn't skilled, but because I couldn't speak English. That day, I realized the power of English. It wasn't just a language, it was the key to my dream. And right then, I didn't have that key. I felt ashamed, embarrassed, and angry at myself. For years, I had told myself, "I don't need English, I'll just be good at my job, and that'll be enough." But now, I finally saw the truth. Without English, I was invisible. That night, I made a decision. I was going to learn English, and I was going to learn it fast. Most people, when they start learning English, do the same thing first. They pay for expensive courses. But I didn't. Why? Because I had tried that before, and it didn't work. A year ago, I had paid for an online English class. The teacher had me memorize vocabulary lists, do grammar exercises, and study boring rules. After 3 months, I still couldn't hold a conversation. I knew right then that expensive classes weren't the answer. If I wanted to learn English fast, I needed something different. I needed a system that actually worked in real life. And that's when I started my 5-month method, which I'm going to share with you. The biggest mistake beginners make is thinking they need more vocabulary. I fell into the same trap. I thought, if I learn 1,000 words, I'll be fluent. But the truth is, I already knew hundreds of words, yet I still couldn't speak. So, for the first 15 days, I didn't study any new words at all. Instead, I focused on something much more powerful, learning how to actually use the words I already knew. Here's exactly what I did. First, I created a survival sentence list. I sat down and thought about what I truly needed to say every day. I wrote 50 simple sentences that were essential for real life. Things like, "Hi, how are you? Can you repeat that? I don't understand. I'm learning English. I need a coffee, please." Every morning, I read these 50 sentences out loud, not just once or twice, but 10 times. At first, my tongue felt slow and clumsy, but after 5 days, these sentences became automatic. Second, I started speaking to myself in English every single day. This turned out to be one of the most powerful things I did. Whenever I was alone, I spoke English out loud. For example, in the shower, I'd say, I am taking a shower. The water is hot. I feel relaxed. While making breakfast, I'd say, I am making eggs. I like eggs. They are easy to cook. At first, I felt ridiculous, but then I realized this was my private classroom. No one could hear me, and no one could judge me. In just 1 week, my brain started thinking in English. Third, I practiced 5 sentences a day, but with a twist. I picked 5 sentences from movies or real conversations, and I didn't just read them. I copied them exactly. I repeated each one 10 times, matching the native speaker's speed, emotion, and pronunciation. This helped me fix my accent and sound more natural. By the end of those first 15 days, something clicked. I stopped translating in my head. I could say basic sentences without thinking too hard, and I felt more confident. But that was just the beginning. After those 15 days, I was ready for the real practice. Part 2. The real practice begins. After fixing my biggest mistake, I was ready for the next step. I could say basic sentences without thinking, and my confidence was growing, but I knew it wasn't enough. I didn't just want to speak short sentences. I wanted real conversations. I wanted to understand native speakers without translating in my head. I wanted to speak fluently. So I created a new plan, and this plan changed everything. If you follow it, you'll improve faster than you ever thought possible. I realized something important. When I tried speaking English, my brain was slow. I knew the words, but I couldn't put them together quickly. I needed a method to make speaking feel natural. That's when I started using what I now call the question-answer method. It's simple, but powerful. Here's how it works. Step 1. I asked myself a simple question in English. Step 2. I answered immediately, without overthinking. Step 3. I repeated the process with different answers. For example, I started with an easy question. What did you do today? At first, my answer was short. I worked. But I forced myself to say more. I worked on my project. I worked on my project for 3 hours. Then I took a break. Every time I answered, I added more details. This trained my brain to think in English and speak without hesitation. Another example. What did you eat for breakfast? My first answer. I ate eggs. Then I expanded. I ate eggs and toast. Then, I ate eggs, toast, and a banana. And eventually, I ate eggs, toast, and a banana because I was really hungry, and I love eating a big breakfast. I did this every day for at least 30 minutes. My speaking speed improved dramatically. My sentences got longer, and I finally stopped translating in my head. One of my biggest challenges was pronunciation. Even when I could speak, I still sounded like a foreigner. Native speakers understood me, but my accent was strong. That's when I discovered the echo technique, probably the best way to improve pronunciation without a teacher. Here's how it worked for me. First, I listened to a native speaker from movies, YouTube, or podcasts. Then, I paused the audio after each sentence. Finally, I repeated the sentence exactly the same way, matching the speed, tone, and emotion. For example, I took a short clip from a movie. The character said, I don't know what you're talking about. I paused and repeated it exactly. I don't know what you're talking about. At first, it felt really hard, but after repeating it 10 times, my voice started to sound more like the native speaker. Another example came from a podcast. It was a beautiful day, so I decided to go for a walk. I paused and repeated. It was a beautiful day, so I decided to go for a walk. I did this every day for about 30 minutes. After a month, my pronunciation had improved so much that native speakers started saying, Wow, your English sounds really natural. I knew vocabulary was important, but I also knew that memorizing word lists doesn't work. So I switched to a better method, the story method. Here's how it worked. First, I picked 5 new words each day. Then, I created a short story using all 5 words. I read the story out loud 10 times, and finally, I used the words in real conversations. For example, with the words excited, invitation, party, arrive, surprise, my story was, I was very excited because I received an invitation to a big party. When I arrived at the party, I got a huge surprise. It was my birthday party. I did this every day, After 3 months, I had learned over 1,000 new words without ever memorizing a boring list. One of the biggest problems learners face is thinking in their native language and then translating into English. This makes speaking slow and unnatural. I trained my brain to think directly in English, and here's how. First, I described everything around me in English. For example, when I walked outside, I'd think, the sky is blue. The weather is hot. I see people walking. That man is wearing a red shirt. Second, I asked myself questions and answered them in English. For example, what am I doing right now? I would answer, I am sitting in a chair, drinking coffee, and writing in my notebook. Third, I wrote a daily journal in English every night. At first, my sentences were simple, but after a month, my writing became much more natural. After a few weeks, something amazing happened. I stopped translating. English words started coming to me naturally. One of the simplest but most powerful things I did was make a rule. Every day, I had to speak English for at least 2 hours. No excuses. If I had no one to talk to, I spoke to myself. If I didn't have time, I spoke while cooking, cleaning, or walking. When I felt lazy, I reminded myself, English is my future. I cannot quit. Part 3, my final breakthrough. By now, I had built the habit of listening and repeating, but I wanted to push myself further. I also realized something crucial. Just listening and speaking wasn't enough. If I didn't understand grammar and sentence structure, I could still make mistakes and sound unnatural. So I started observing how native speakers structured their sentences. Every time I heard a sentence, I didn't just repeat it. I asked myself, why is this sentence structured this way? For example, I heard people say, I have been learning English for 5 months. But in school, I had learned, I am learning English for 5 months. That was my first big realization. The English we learn in school is often very different from how people actually speak. I started researching the differences. I learned about tenses in real-life use. When do people use the present perfect tense, and why do they say, I have been learning instead of I am learning? I realized that small details like these make a huge difference in sounding natural. I wrote down common sentence structures and tried using them in my daily practice. One of my biggest challenges was prepositions. Why on the bus, but in the car? Why at night, but in the morning? I kept a small notebook and wrote down confusing prepositions with examples. Whenever I had doubts, I searched online or listened to how native speakers used them. To take my English even further, I started keeping a daily diary in English. Every night, I wrote about my day. At first, my writing was very basic. Today I went to work. I was tired. I ate pizza. It was good. But I wanted to improve, so I asked myself, how do native speakers write? I read blogs, books, and news articles, paying attention to how they structured their sentences. Then I tried to copy that style in my diary. One thing that really accelerated my learning was shadowing. I found videos of native speakers, put on my headphones, and repeated every word immediately after them, matching their speed and pronunciation. I did this for at least 20 minutes every day. Within a few weeks, my pronunciation improved dramatically. Another trick that helped was watching English movies with subtitles. But I didn't just watch passively. I paused after every sentence and repeated it, focusing on pronunciation, tone, and rhythm. Slowly, my English started sounding more natural. Around this stage, I realized something crucial. English isn't just about words or grammar. It's also about confidence. Many people know English, but are too scared to speak. I made a decision. I would not be afraid of making mistakes. I started speaking to people in English whenever I had the chance, at work, at the store, with friends. Even when I was unsure, I noticed something surprising. People understood me, even if I made small mistakes. No one laughed, and that gave me the confidence to keep going. But then I faced my biggest fear, talking to native English speakers. I was terrified that they wouldn't understand me or that I'd freeze. So I came up with a strategy. I prepared 10 common conversation topics and practiced them every day. How was your day? What do you do for work? What's your favorite food? I practiced answering these questions fluently. Then I took the leap. I joined an online group where people from different countries practiced English. At first, I was nervous, but I quickly realized everyone was there to learn, just like me. I made friends from all over the world, and we practiced together. Not only did this improve my English, but it also made learning fun. By the time I reached the final stage of my English journey, I felt a new, unshakable confidence growing inside me. I was no longer the same person who had been rejected because of poor English skills. I had transformed myself, step by step, through consistent effort, practice, and the right mindset. Now I want to share the last and most important lessons I learned, so you too can achieve fluency. One day, I was speaking to myself in the mirror, just like I had so many times before, but this time, something was different. I wasn't hesitating. I wasn't translating in my head. The words flowed naturally. It felt like magic, but in reality, it was the result of months of hard work. That same day, I decided to test my progress by having a deep conversation with a native speaker. I joined an online meeting where people from different countries discussed various topics. At first, I was nervous, but I reminded myself, I've worked too hard to doubt myself now. And then I spoke. The words came out clearly and confidently. I didn't struggle to find the right words. I understood what others were saying without feeling lost. People listened, nodded in agreement, and even asked me questions. It was an incredible moment, the day I knew I had truly achieved fluency. 5 months after I started my journey, I applied for my dream job again. But this time, I wasn't the same Jack who had walked in nervously months ago. I wasn't the guy who hesitated, who felt small, who couldn't find the right words. No, this time, I walked into that interview room with confidence. I sat in front of the interviewer not as someone who feared English, but as someone who had mastered it. I spoke clearly. I answered every question with ease. I wasn't just speaking English, I was owning it. And I could see it in their eyes. They were impressed, not just with my language, but with my effort, my persistence, my transformation. A few days later, I got the call. I'll never forget that moment. Jack, congratulations. You got the job. For a second, I couldn't believe it. My dream job, the same company that had rejected me before, now wanted me. My starting salary was $5,000 a month, $5,000 more than I had ever imagined earning. I just stood there, holding my phone, shaking, my eyes full of tears. The first thing I did was call my parents. Mom, Dad, I did it. My mother started crying on the other end. My father, a man who rarely shows emotion, simply said, "We always knew you could." In that moment, I realized I wasn't just doing this for me. I was doing it for them too. With my first salary, I bought my father a beautiful watch, something he had always wanted but never bought for himself. For my mother, I bought a gold necklace. She had sacrificed so much for me, for our family. And now it was my turn to give back. At first, they refused. "We don't need anything, son," they said. But I shook my head. "No, this is my way of saying thank you. Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." And that was the moment I truly understood it had all been worth it. Every struggle, every late night, every moment of frustration, every time I felt like giving up, it was all worth it. Key lessons from my journey. Now, let me share the most important lessons I learned that helped me become fluent in English in just a few months. 1. Mindset is everything. Most people fail to learn English because they believe they can't. I used to think the same way. But the moment I changed my mindset, everything changed. I told myself, English is not difficult. I can learn it just like any other skill. I stopped saying, "I'm bad at English," and started saying, "I'm improving every day." If you think you can't do it, you won't. But if you believe you can, you'll find a way. 2. Surround yourself with English. I made English a part of my daily life. I changed my phone's language to English. I watched only English content. I listened to English songs, even if I didn't understand all the lyrics. I followed English-speaking influencers on social media. Every day, I fed my brain with English. I also made sure to speak and think in English. Whenever I looked at an object, I would name it in English. If I saw a car, I'd say, "That's a blue car. It's moving fast." Small habits like this help me build my vocabulary naturally. 3. Speak without fear. Many people are afraid of making mistakes. But mistakes are part of learning. I used to be scared of speaking until I realized native speakers don't care if you make mistakes. They appreciate your effort. So I forced myself to speak. I spoke to shopkeepers in English. I asked strangers for directions in English. I even talked to myself in English whenever I was alone. The more I spoke, the better I became. 4. Active listening and shadowing. Listening is just as important as speaking. I trained my ears to really understand spoken English by listening to podcasts, audiobooks, and real conversations. But I didn't just listen passively. I practiced shadowing. Shadowing means listening to a sentence and immediately repeating it, mimicking the pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. This technique helped me improve my accent and speak more fluently. 5. Expanding my vocabulary smartly. At first, I tried memorizing long lists of words, but I quickly realized that was useless. Instead, I focused on learning words in context, using phrases rather than isolated words. For example, instead of memorizing the word happy, I learned phrases like, "I feel so happy today," or "That movie made me really happy." Learning this way made it much easier to remember words and use them naturally in conversations. 6. Grammar without books. I didn't spend hours buried in grammar books. Instead, I learned grammar naturally by listening and speaking. Whenever I made a mistake, I noted it and corrected myself. For example, I used to say, "He go to school." When someone corrected me, I learned, "He goes to school." The best way to learn grammar is by using the language, not memorizing endless rules. 7. Consistency over perfection. Many people wait until they feel perfect before speaking. That's a huge mistake. I didn't wait. I started speaking from day one. Even when I knew only a few words, I used them. I made a rule for myself. Every day, I would do something in English. Some days, I spoke for 10 minutes. Some days, I wrote a short paragraph. Some days, I listened to a podcast. The key was consistency. Even on lazy days, I did something. You don't need expensive classes. You don't need a perfect environment. You just need a strong desire and a commitment to practice every single day. Imagine yourself 6 months from now, speaking English fluently and confidently. Imagine all the opportunities that will open up, and imagine how proud you'll feel. Start today. Speak, listen, practice, and never give up. Your future self will thank you. This isn't just about learning English. It's about changing your life. And here's what I want to say to you. If I can do it, you can do it too. It doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter how bad you think your English is. What matters is that you start right now. I know it's hard. I know it feels impossible sometimes. But trust me, the only thing standing between you and fluency is consistency. Stop doubting yourself. Stop making excuses. Surround yourself with English. Speak, listen, read, write every single day. Make mistakes. Learn from them. Improve. Because here's the truth. The pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of regret lasts forever. So what will you choose? Choose discipline. Choose growth. Choose success. Your journey to fluency starts now. If this story inspired you, like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll be with you every step of the way. Let's do this together.